her trip to Asia. They have been dodging a lot of questions, even in the United States. A lot of U.S. media asking questions. Both the White House, Nancy Pelosi's office is not willing to give that answer yet. And guys, everybody, welcome to today's stream. We have a very important topic to discuss. I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to mute my mic here, and we're going to get started. So first of all, I know we got a lot of people already waiting in the chat. I know a lot of you are very interested in discussing this and kind of hearing my insights and hearing, what's important about this visit from Nancy Pelosi. I want to thank you all for your amazing support, first of all, for being here. And, this is a really important time because I think that what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a lot of tension rising between the United States and China. And it's really been ramping up over the last 48 hours. Kevin, one of our long-term supporters here on the channel, he had said in the comment section, it feels like the Cuban Missile Crisis, tensions are getting higher and higher. And what basically what happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis, we had to have some cool-headed diplomacy. We really need right now some better diplomacy, both from the United States, really from the United States, as again, it's Nancy Pelosi who is making this kind of trip to Taiwan. And one of the first questions that I have for everybody is, and this is something that I think many media in the United States is actually asking, is what is the purpose of this trip? Why is Nancy Pelosi even going to Taiwan in the first place? I mean, this is the really interesting thing. I'm actually on a business trip right now. As you can see, for the long-time supporters of this channel, I'm not in my normal studio, but I'm here on the road. And so kind of have this makeshift studio right now. Got some exciting things that I'm going to be announcing. So make sure that you stay tuned later this week. I got a couple new videos coming out, some exciting new news to share with everybody, and some really big things in the pipeline. But I want everybody to realize, that right now we really need to have better diplomacy. And this is a really important time for the future of the United States and China. Now, what I'm actually in the United States right now as we speak, and this is really interesting because I've been talking to a lot of people here, and everyone is like, what is the point of Nancy Pelosi even going there? And I'm going to reveal later on the real reason that she's, might be going to Taiwan. And, if in fact she does go, there's a specific reason from the United States that now she feels like she has to go. But a lot of people in America right now are, America has so many domestic issues that we're battling right now. It's really interesting. Right now in America, we have the abortion law that is basically just, it's a huge debate right now. There's a war going on the right to abortion. We have a huge energy crisis. We have rising fuel costs. The average middle American is, quite honestly, is really suffering right now. There's a lot of things that the United States government needs to improve on, and the middle class is getting crunched right now. Gas is $5 a gallon here in America, and that is just so unaffordable for the middle class, and it's really just pinching their budgets. And this is something that's really a huge concern. So I think when you talk to the average American, I'm going to be very clear. They don't give a crap about Nancy Pelosi. They don't care at all about her going to Taiwan. This is not important for American citizens. And this is the really frustrating thing with the US government, is that so many times, our government is involving themselves in matters that do not benefit the United States citizens. And that's probably my biggest criticism of the US government. And being here in America this week, I've kind of heard that a lot from a lot of people. The biggest complaint is, I was talking with a couple guys yesterday, and the interesting thing as well is the more successful people you talk to, for example, if you're talking to an established business owner, someone that has some wealth in this country, it's really interesting because they are a little bit more tuned in. They're not brainwashed by the US media and, thinking, oh, China's the greatest threat in the world. They're like, come on, let's be realistic. China's our greatest trading partner. The United States needs China just as much as China needs the US. And so, one of the guys I spoke to yesterday, he's like, why are we even getting involved in Ukraine? He's like, how does that benefit, the United States citizen? Quite honestly, in his opinion, this is what he said. If Russia just goes ahead and takes all of Ukraine, how does it affect us? What does that do for us at all? It doesn't affect us at all. So, he's just like, I don't know why we're spending $40 billion, just send it over to Ukraine. And again, here we are, we're getting involved in another very big conflict here. But I'm going to show you a little tweet, and then let me pull this up. And this is actually, it's not a tweet, but if we look at this is what Nancy Pelosi, this is what she says on her Twitter bio. It says, "I'm focusing on strengthening America's middle class and creating jobs." Now, let's get real here. How are you strengthening America's middle class and creating jobs by going on a plane and leaving and getting out of the country and going to a place like Taiwan? It doesn't do that. Now, I've actually shared this as a tweet, and I just asked that question, and there was a lot of good responses. One of the funny ones, but unfortunately, one of the truth of the situation is people said, well, people that work, average citizens that work for the military industrial complex, they're the ones that are going to benefit from this. And that's a sad truth, because we know that the United States government, our military industrial complex drives our economy. Taiwan is a major, major customer. We sell billions of dollars of weapons to Taiwan. And what's really disturbing to me is that when you hear the very far right side, I've heard some far right politicians say, a war with Taiwan would actually be good for us. And it's just absolutely mind blowing that people would have that opinion. That, like, let's get into a confrontation with China over Taiwan. That doesn't help anybody. That's going to be a disaster for the entire world economy, most specifically U.S. and China, which are the two biggest drivers of this world economy. And again, like I mentioned, both of them need each other. So it's really irresponsible. I would say that's probably the easiest way to say it. It's very irresponsible when you have, this is not a computer game that we're playing. This is not, this simulation game that we're playing. And maybe that's a problem in the US, because we know that those violent video games are so prevalent in the United States, which does lead to a lot of violence. And it's really disturbing, though, when you have politicians who really just think of this as a game. And the interesting thing is I spoke about this last week. I thought this topic is so important. I said, you know what, we need to have another live stream about this, because this is so important. And I've got some other documents that I want to share with you guys, some other opinion pieces that are really important. And guys, we're 7 minutes into the stream. We're over 900 people in the stream. That's amazing. This is we're off to a fantastic start here. I know many of you want to hear this. You want to hear my opinions about this. You want to talk about this. If you're following U.S.-China relations, this is the story. It's the biggest story in the world right now. As again, we're ramping up these tensions. Let's take a minute here and let's just say hi. Let me check the comment section. Kind of have my opening dialogue there. Again, really appreciate all of you guys for being here. Make sure let's make this a little bit more interactive. You guys have some questions, drop them down there. I definitely want to hear you guys, and we definitely want to hear your opinion. So I'm going to just check this comment section. Sometimes we do get some haters in here that like to spam. $6 plus in California. Absolutely. California will always lead that. That gas rate. Nancy Pelosi seems to be on her own, maybe to raise profitability of some of her husband's investments. Well, that is a big thing that many people are critical of. Actually, I follow an account on Twitter that's like Nancy Pelosi Trading, and someone follows all of her insider trading. Not insider trading, that's the wrong word, I should say, but all of her trading, because she does have to publicly disclose when she's buying and selling shares. So, all of that information is available to the public. But we've got people from Israel, Australia, all over the world. This is fantastic. So we've got Vic says, Nancy's visit to Taiwan is not confirmed yet. Most probably she will skip this visit again. Yeah, that's going to be something that we're going to talk about later in the stream is, and I think the White House, they're not going to, Nancy Pelosi and the White House, they're not going to come out and say, hey, we're going to go to Taiwan on August 1st. Obviously, as soon as they say a date, that's going to rise up tensions even more. I think if she were to go to Taiwan, it's going to have to be unannounced, and I think what we're also seeing right now is we're seeing there's a very big battle between the United States and China in the Asia Pacific region. And it's quite interesting because the United States, and I highlighted this on a video last month, where the United States, they want to have a bigger presence in Asia. And the main reason, and this is what they've said, is that we want to combat the rise of China in Asia. Now, the interesting thing is that when you look at China, obviously China is in Asia. They're the dominant regional player in Asia. They drive so many of the local economies there. And an interesting story that I was listening to earlier this week was the fact that Indonesia is a very large country in Asia, and they have a very, very close relationship with China. China is Indonesia's largest trading partner, but interesting enough, the United States is their largest military partner. And United States, essentially, this is what happens is happening in Asia right now. The United States sent General Milley, who is the highest ranking officer in the United States military. They sent him directly to Indonesia, and his message was, you need to beware of China. Well, a few weeks earlier, Foreign Minister Wang Yi from China went to Indonesia, and he said, you need to be aware of the United States and what they're doing in Asia. And so I think what we're seeing right now is, we're seeing the United States and China wanting to gain that regional power and that influence. Now, China has the advantage, obviously. China's based in Asia. And I mentioned this before as well, is the United States is spread too thin. We're all over the world. We've got so many military interests. We have so many wars that we get involved in. And, we're spread a little bit too thin. So when you're looking at how are we going to drive the economic recovery in Southeast Asia and many of these countries, the US doesn't have the money, the power, the time to do that, but China does. That's what China does, right? And so, right now there's a massive high-speed rail link that is a key part of the Belt and Road Initiative that's being built in Indonesia. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but Indonesia is planning on moving their capital. It's the only country in the world right now that are planning to move their capital from Jakarta. They're going to move it 1,200 kilometers east to Borneo. This is a very big story. And again, they want to, basically improve that economic development and bring more, distribute more wealth amongst the people. Where does that sound familiar? Well, that's certainly happening in China with, the rising middle class, certainly more people, more wealth being distributed, things like that. So again, there's a lot of countries. I looked at the Philippines. I think most likely Nancy Pelosi will certainly. I believe her first stop will be in the Philippines because again, the Philippines are, U.S. and Philippines have been very close over the years. But the current Philippine president, he's very close to China. There's a lot of deals going in with China, and this is a very big story. So again, you're going to see the US and China continue to battle for global influence. And I've been making a series of videos. I made one on Africa, South America, the Middle East, Pacific, Southeast Asia, the Asia Pacific region, Africa. We've talked about all of these places around the world and how China is winning this influence. Now, Taiwan really is a very important place. And I think, unfortunately, for so many people, and I'm gonna share with everybody from the U.S. perspective because the United States, we kind of play this very interesting game when it comes to Taiwan. We basically try to stand in the middle. Officially, the United States government, of course, recognizes the one China policy. We do recognize that China is the one sole legitimate government, that Taiwan is part of China. It's represented like that in the United Nations. Every president, basically to have diplomatic relations and trade relations with China, that is a red line for them. You must observe the one China policy. So officially, we do. But we also employ this strategic ambiguity. And strategic ambiguity, for many of you, as you know, it's basically a gray area. We basically want to officially say that Taiwan is part of China, but kind of on the side, we want to treat Taiwan like it's an independent country. And the problem is that in America, we have a lot of very far right extreme people that say, you know what? It's time to get away from strategic ambiguity. Let's shift to strategic clarity and just go ahead and declare Taiwan as an independent country. Now, of course, if this were to happen, this would be a disaster for U.S.-China relations. This would be a disaster for the world because this would be, basically a retraction of a policy that the United States has stood by for many, many decades. And that's something that, again, the problem as well is that if you look throughout history, the United States, we don't do a good job of listening to key people that have accurate insights into Asia and most specifically China. And there's a great book that I've highlighted many times on this channel before. If you've been a longtime follower of this channel, you'll know that I'm a very big fan of The China Mirage. And The China Mirage was written by James Bradley, and it goes through the history of the United States and China. And the problem is that, throughout history, we thought we understood China, but we always looked at China from the American lens. And I would say this is probably the biggest problem that we have in the United States is that so many people here, they never leave America. They have a very, their entire world is the United States. And this is this thing called American exceptionalism. We believe that we're the best country in the world. We believe that we believe that everything in America is the best. And unfortunately, so many people never have a chance to go outside of the country. They never get a chance to explore things. Whenever I'm visiting the United States, I tell people, oh, I'm coming in from Canada, and people are like, wow, Canada, what's that place like? It's just what an amazing place. I've never even like I don't know anybody from Canada, and I'm like, well, it is our biggest trading partner. Guys, like we should know more about Canada. But I grew up in America. Growing up in America, we don't know anything about our largest trading partner and the country that we share the largest land border in the world, over 4,000 kilometers. Americans don't understand anything about Canada. How can we expect Americans to understand anything about China when the cultural differences and the nuances are so different, so extreme, and it's just so important that we get that cultural element. But we saw this throughout United States history, and unfortunately, history doesn't often repeat, but it does rhyme, and it does rhyme. And this is what we're seeing right now in U.S. diplomacy is, in the early, 20s and 30s and 40s, we had American servicemen, we had American diplomats that were in China. One of the most outstanding ones was John Service, a statesman by the name of John Service. He was born in Chongqing to missionary parents there, and he grew up in the streets of Chongqing. He spoke a fluent level of, absolutely native fluent level of Chinese. John Service actually spent time with Mao Zedong, and he and Chairman Mao, he reached out to John Service and he said, "Look, I want to talk to the United States government. I want, you're the only person that I can get contact to. Go back to Washington D.C. Tell them that I want to meet with them and that I actually want to have a relationship with the United States. I actually want to do trade with the United States because." We need the United States. We need foreign investment to come into China to help this country develop. Well, John Service went back to the United States, and you know what they did? They basically put him in jail. They basically put him in jail because they said, we believe that you're a communist and we believe that you're a spy working for the Chinese government. But the problem is that you got to remember this is in the 1930s and 40s. So, at that time we didn't have obviously all of this technology. And the interesting thing about this is that here you have a guy that speaks native Chinese. He has the cultural insight. He's speaking to Chairman Mao, and America doesn't even want to listen to that side of the story. And this is why America made so many mistakes. They spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars backing Chiang Kai-shek, who basically just blew all the money. And he just was a complete, and in America's eyes, the Americans, they blindly followed Chiang Kai-shek and thought, well, everybody in China is going to follow Chiang. Everybody respects him as the leader. Meanwhile, Chairman Mao was talking to the people, and it was very easy for Chairman Mao to win that civil war and to basically form, China as we know today in 1949. So this was really a humiliating diplomacy from the United States in the sense that they didn't even, they had their own American citizen coming from China telling them the truth. They didn't even want to listen to him. But yet Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his team of, Washington, D.C. advisors, many of them who had never even been to China or knew anything about China at all, he was listening to their advice, and that's where they made these strategic miscalculations. And this is really important because we see the same things happening today, where we have diplomacy is really being lost right now, and the big issue here is that, and I'm going to tell you why why this is becoming such a big issue for the United States. And it all comes down to face. It's a face issue right now. And in China, we have this concept of giving and losing face. Well, that actually applies almost everywhere around the world. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing right now. You see, what Nancy Pelosi, again, nobody really understands. Nobody can answer the question, why are you going to Taiwan in the first place? And I don't know if everybody's aware of this, because if you're not, only Americans really know this, but the Speaker of the House is a very high-ranking government official. Nancy Pelosi is actually second in line to the U.S. presidency. Of course, you have Joe Biden as the president, Vice President Kamala Harris. The next one down is Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House. So if something were to happen to the president and vice president, Nancy Pelosi would become the president of the United States. She's a very high-ranking official. She's the Speaker of the House. And like it or not, if she goes to Taiwan, she's representing the United States government, and that could signal a shift. It could signal the shift that, hey, we want to end strategic ambiguity. We want to shift to strategic clarity. Hey, we want to get away from the one China policy. We want to give more freedoms to Taiwan, and are we going to militarily support them? So again, your actions say a lot, and that's something that Nancy Pelosi and other politicians need to understand. But here's the interesting part, and here's why it's a big issue for Americans. In America, we're all about having freedom. So the big problem that you see right now is you see a lot of Republicans are coming out and they're saying, well, who is the Chinese government to dictate where the Speaker of the House is allowed to travel? The Speaker of the House, she has freedom. She's an American citizen. She can do whatever she wants to do. She can board that plane. She can go to Taiwan. It's nobody else's business. And this is what we have. We have a face issue here because if Nancy Pelosi cancels this trip and she doesn't go to Taiwan, well, now she is going to get absolutely ridiculed from the Republican Party. The Republican Party will come out and say, Nancy Pelosi, you are so weak. How could you be scared of China? How could you cancel your trip because of China? And basically, it would really cause her to lose a lot of face in America. It would cause the Democrats to look bad. And basically, as we know, we're going up to a very important midterm election. Now, the midterm election is going to be a very, very big event in America. I do think that the Democrats are going to lose a lot of the power because they've been doing a terrible job in the presidency. I mean, they're not doing. Gas prices are through the roof. We've got, there's so many struggles. Again, this is the big thing that you talk to Americans. Focus on our own internal stuff. And I've said this before. It's time to be a little bit selfish. Put America first. We need to focus on what America is doing. And again, China, the tensions over Taiwan would not be happening if Nancy Pelosi wasn't going to Taiwan. So again, we have to look at who's steering the pot, who's adding fuel to the fire right now. And again, it's not China. It's not China that's making this and amplifying this up. But if Nancy Pelosi, whose stated goal is to improve America's middle class and create more jobs, you should be sticking at home right now. You should be working on trying to get Republicans and Democrats together to pass legislation to actually move things forward. Unfortunately, and this is what's very sad with America right now, is that the only thing that can be passed from Republicans and Democrats is something that is anti-China. If you have a bill that will combat China or the rise of China, that's seemingly the only thing that both Democrats and Republicans can agree on right now. And, the United States government, we have a very complicated system. If you want to pass a bill, essentially it has to go to the House of Representatives, it has to pass there, and then has to go to the Senate, and it has to pass there. Once both chambers pass that bill, then it goes to the presidency and it gets to Joe Biden's desk. Well, that's where so many things get shot down because the Democrats will say, hey, we want to do this, but the Republicans, even if it's good for American citizens, most likely the Republicans will shut it down just because they want to block what the Democrats are doing. But, and that's really sad because there's a lot of things like, for example, we look at the United States. This is one of the things that really is kind of a very big oxymoron in the United States is the fact that, we always celebrate our military, right? When you're in America, you everywhere you go, there's military discounts, right? If you go to a store, a sporting event, an airline, a hotel, if you're United States military, you flash that badge, you're probably going to get 10 to 20% discount. Because in our country, in America, we praise the military because we're taught as young children, well, these men are fighting wars around the world for your freedom. Now, that's one of the biggest lines of propaganda in the world because, the United States has freedom just like everywhere else in the world. Canada, Australia, Japan, many people in China have said, hey, I've got freedom here. I have no problem with what we're doing here in China. But we have this need to make sure that American citizens believe that, hey, you don't have that freedom. This freedom is a very unique thing. Hence why we need to go fight more wars, which is just not true. We don't need to do all of these wars around the world. And we certainly don't need all these 800 military bases. I mean, we need to be spending more money domestically and, investing in infrastructure projects, investing in projects that actually help the middle class Americans. And, again, look at China's rise, 800 million people out of poverty into the middle class, and what we're seeing in America is the rich get richer, the poor get poor. That wealth divide is just really, really separating. And I mean, it's been just exasperated in this pandemic, and that's just something that, again, we really need to look. Really need to look to better diplomacy. And this is the thing: is when I go back to that face issue, is now you have Nancy Pelosi saying, "Well, I'm going to go to Taiwan, basically just so I don't lose face amongst the Republicans in America." And if that's really your main reason for going, that's just very, very poor diplomacy. I mean, that is just it's just stupid, to be honest. I mean, let's just call it as it is. That is just, let's go ahead and sacrifice this peace and stability that we have in the world, and just so that I don't look weak in front of my opposition, is basically what it boils down to. And so again, I have a couple things that I want to share with you. Let's take a little break here, and guys, we have over 1,800 people in the stream tonight. This is fantastic. This is one of the best attended streams that I've had. And again, we're only, I'm not sure how many minutes we are in here. We're about just 25 minutes into the stream, so this is fantastic. I haven't had a chance to look at the comment section, so let's go here, and want to thank you guys for all of your support. Nancy is visiting other countries on the way: Japan, Singapore, Malaysia. Yeah, we're going to see where she goes. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think she might go to the Philippines first. We'll see. Let's have a look here. What's wrong with Taiwan receiving guests and having a sleepover with them, Cyrus? Well, again, the issue is that what you have to realize is, again, is this: if Nancy Pelosi were to go to Taiwan, this would be the highest ranking government official from the United States side since 1997. And the thing is that the tension, basically, a lot has changed in the last since 1997, of course, but a lot has changed in the last few years. And the thing that we hear is that we know that China sells a tremendous sorry we know that the United States sells a lot of weapons to Taiwan, and that it is a very lucrative opportunity for the United States, and we look for where we can sell weapons in the world. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, look at a country like Saudi Arabia. It's really ironic because we criticize Saudi Arabia for human rights abuses, but Saudi Arabia is one of our largest trading partners in the Middle East. And we basically have this kind of interesting relationship with Saudi Arabia where we basically will overlook any of their human rights abuses. You don't hear all of these campaigns against the Saudis. And I mean, the Saudi Arabia government, I mean, they beheaded an American journalist. And it's like, well, you know what, we still need the Saudi oil. So we're going to say, okay, we don't condone that. We certainly will condemn that, but they're still going to do business with Saudi Arabia because we need that oil. And we're going to still force Saudi Arabia to do business in U.S. dollar. So we pick and choose what we want to do and where we go around the world. That's what the United States government does. And this is just, again, it's just we need smart diplomacy. The reason is when you actually talk to people on the ground, and again, this is something that I mentioned in last week's stream. You talk to educated people that are working in Washington, D.C. You have to imagine there are many Americans that speak fluent Chinese, that have spent time in China, that have worked abroad in the Beijing embassy, that have had a lot of overseas experience in China. I know a few people personally that are working in Washington, D.C. that have this experience. You ask them, they believe that this is not the right time for Nancy Pelosi to go to Taiwan. It's as simple as that. You talk to anybody that has a real insight into understanding U.S.-China relations, they will advise this is not the right time. This is definitely not the right time. And there's a very simple solution that I'm going to share later on in the stream. And this is the question from Senjo. Does Nancy Pelosi even know the purpose of her visit or understand the consequences? To be honest, I don't think she does. I think that for her, we also have to look at we have to look at her track record. And I'm going to share an open letter that was published from an author by the name of George Koo. George is he's an author he's based in Southern California. He writes a lot of really good articles for the Asian Times. And actually, you know what? We just passed over 2,000 people in the stream. So everybody, welcome here. And I'm going to just go ahead and bring up this letter. This is a really interesting letter here. And this is a open letter to Nancy Pelosi. Now, this was published, I believe it was published just yesterday on the Asian Times. And this is, again, this is authored by George Koo, who is an American citizen based in California. And it says, open letter to Nancy Pelosi. If you step over the red line China has laid down, it can't back down and not react. Let's go ahead and read this letter to you guys. In 1991, it says, Dear Nancy, In 1991, you were a member of the Congressional Party invited to Beijing as guests of the Chinese government. There, you held a well planned, impromptu press conference in Tiananmen Square, where you unfurled a banner proclaiming human rights in China. A group of Western journalists patiently waited for you to break off from your official host and show up. That was just simply brilliant. The show and tell established your credentials as a human rights advocate. And as a newly elected member of the U.S. House of Representatives, the publicity certainly didn't hurt your chances of getting reelected. Now, the Chinese government probably regarded your breach of protocol as rude and uncouth, but hey, that was your problem. Now, rumors have it that you are planning to visit Taiwan in August. A lot has changed since your trip to China more than 30 years ago. The Taiwanese media are all in a tizzy, asking each other, who invited Nancy Pelosi? After all, Taiwan isn't some American offshore possession that Nancy can come and go as she pleases. To paraphrase one of the commentators, doesn't she understand that we can't stand the excitement and tension of her visit? He added, most people of Taiwan like the relations with mainland China just the way they are: peaceful, stable, quiet, and we sell a lot of our stuff across the Taiwan Strait to the tune of more than US $100 billion in surplus every year. Some say that you are planning to visit Taiwan to encourage the Taipei government to start a fight with the mainland. Now, the people of Taiwan have seen how the US has been helping Ukraine in its fight with Russia, and they don't want any part of that setup. Before the Ukraine war, around 60% of the people in Taiwan were sure that American troops would join a fight in their defense. Now that number has fallen to around 30%. Maybe the publicity of a visit by you to Taiwan, daring the People's Republic of China to respond, will help your Democratic Party in the midterm election this November. But as you are the Speaker of the House and 2 steps away from the presidency, like it or not, your actions represent the official position of our country. If you step over the red line China has laid down, it can't back down and not react. We don't know what its response would be, but it would be dangerous, potentially explosive, in fact. As a loyal American, I humbly ask for your careful consideration for the sake of the world peace and your personal safety. Best regards, George Koo. Now, I really like George Koo. He's his background, I believe he's ethnically Chinese, but he's, a naturalized American citizen. He is based in Southern California, and he has written a lot of really great articles on the Asian Times. And there's some really interesting facts that we can kind of pick out here. And as one of the things that many people don't know is, Nancy Pelosi did go to China. She did visit Beijing back, in the early 1990s. And, again, it's kind of this thing where we see, this human rights. Oh, we want to have more human rights. America is the big champion of human rights. And it's really interesting because I talked to, if you guys know Charles Barkley is the famous basketball player in America. And Charles Barkley, he is potentially going to be starting a new career as a commentator for a new sports league that is funded from Saudi Arabia. Well, he's been under the press conference. He's been under fire from the U.S. press because they're like, Charles Barkley, how can you be doing a deal with Saudi Arabia given their human rights? And Charles Barkley just looked at the media and he said, I'm sick and tired of talking about human rights around the world. Why doesn't the United States focus on human rights in this own country? Let's focus on improving our own human rights conditions before we go and preach to other people, around the world. But, the interesting thing as well is that I want to share something that's also really important. Nancy Pelosi, she has been, her track record over the last 3 decades is, she's been very anti-China. She's been very much, she'll be voting against anything that goes against China. And the big one, event that really stands out to most Chinese people is the 2019 riots in Hong Kong. Now, I've covered this extensively. Actually, I basically started this YouTube channel kind of shortly after that because having lived in Hong Kong and my daughter was born in Hong Kong, my daughter is a Hong Kong citizen, holds a Hong Kong passport. Hong Kong is a very special place. My wife and I were actually married in Hong Kong. It's a very special place for our family, a very important place. And it was devastating for us to see the destruction and the chaos that these rioters, led on the city of Hong Kong. Now, no one forgets this. Nancy Pelosi looked at the chaos. She looked at the destruction in the cities of Hong Kong. She looked at the MTR stations being set on fire. She looked at the universities being destroyed. She looked at the government building in Hong Kong being ransacked by rioters and completely defaced, graffitied, and basically just completely, trashed. And Nancy Pelosi said these famous lines: "This is a beautiful sight to behold." And those words are basically ingrained in the minds of almost every Chinese citizen. Is this is what Nancy Pelosi wanted? She wants to see, this chaos consume China. And China had to pass the national security law, which finally brought peace and stability back to Hong Kong, which of course is part of China. So again, this is something that's really important for people to understand. And this was actually a very big kind of what we see as karma. Karma happens in the world. And of course, this was in like August of 2019. Sorry, this was in 2019 that she said this. And then, of course, in January 6th, 2021, the United States Capitol, basically the insurrection happened, and then all of a sudden the tables were turned, and now the U.S. Capitol had the same thing happen, where the U.S. Capitol was invaded by these far right extremists and these Trump nationalists that basically that did the same thing. So it was a bit of karma there for Nancy Pelosi. 18 months earlier, she looked at Hong Kong and said, "That's a beautiful sight to behold." And then 18 months later, her own government was ransacked by U.S. citizens, which was a very sad day for the United States government. That was really a very, very low point in our democracy as a nation. As an American citizen, that was very hard to watch our Capitol building, being ransacked by people, because again, like, I'm not anti-democracy. I think democracy is a great form of government. I don't think it's the only form of government, nor do I think it's the best form of government. I think it is a form of government that has been successful for many countries, but that doesn't mean that it is the only way to success. And that's something that I've stated many times, on this channel, is that, when you're looking around the world, again, one of the greatest examples would be the country of Singapore. They are very much more of a one-party state. There's a lot more restrictions there, but you cannot argue how successful that government has been in the last 6 decades, taking Singapore from a very poor, small little island to one of the most prosperous countries in the world. And they're doing some amazing things for the citizens in Singapore. But again, that's all because of different governments, and because different governments need to exist, because that's how our world is. Our world is full of different cultures, and we need to basically understand that. Sorry, my throat. I got a little bit in my throat. Let me get some water. As we have over 2,500 people in the stream today, I'm just so excited to have all of you here. And let me take a moment to look at some of the chats that we have here, and just really appreciate Trevor Norman with a super chat here. Thank you, Trevor, for your support. If she goes to Taiwan, the POF should buzz her aircraft, but not fire her down, give her a real shock. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, what that response is going to be. Now, some people have speculated that, the Chinese military could shoot that plane down. I mean, China is not stupid. There's no way that China would ever, shoot down Nancy Pelosi's plane. I mean, that would start World War III. I mean, they're not going to. And again, in China, you have to look at the history of China. China doesn't strike first. China is not going out there trying to aggressively, start a war with anybody. But the thing is that I could see a situation where China sends a military aircraft in that vicinity and maybe forces her to go somewhere else, or to to land that plane. And again, that would cause the United, again, it's just tensions. Tensions would rise because the United States would come out and they'd say, "Well, China, you're not allowed to do that." China would say, "Well, you're not allowed to do this." And all of a sudden, we've got this kind of Cuban Missile Crisis tension in the air. And again, it just needs to be smart diplomacy. So again, we'll have to see what's going to happen happen here. This is from Zivin. If Cyrus had the chance to become president of the United States, the world would probably be safer and more peaceful. I really appreciate that. A lot of you guys have said, I should go into politics, and that I should, potentially go back to the United States full time, and, even get involved in local politics. I don't know. Maybe one day, I'll pursue that. But it's difficult because, I do realize, I think there's just so much corruption inside the United States government. I mean, it's honestly the political system it's all about money. It's how much money, how much fundraising can you do? And so that's where you see, for example, I mean, I've been a very big outspoken critic of the Second Amendment in America. I personally think that we should revoke the Second Amendment. I don't think that the right to bear arms, the right to have a gun in America, I don't think that should be a right. I think it should be a privilege. I think that gun ownership does exist in America. I think that's fine, but it should be a privilege, not a right. But the problem is no Republicans going to vote on that because they're all getting funded by the National Rifle Association. So that's where you basically get into politics in America is people are funded and people have an agenda. And that's where, I've been a very big outspoken critic on some of these very far right extremists like Marco Rubio and Tom Cotton and these guys who, they are China hawks and they want to, they're going to say whatever they want to say because, quite frankly, they're going to get funded from organizations that that want a war. And again, there are companies in America that want a war in Taiwan because, well, we can sell more weapons. And that's a very disturbing business model. That's a very sad business model because there's a lot of industries we can go in. We can make a lot of money in different ways. We don't need to go into war, but unfortunately, war is very profitable. And again, yeah, if I ever did get into politics, my issue, I'll give you a really good example. In where I live in Richmond, British Columbia, this is an interesting thing. We had a local politician that was ethnically Chinese. I believe he was ethnically Hong Kong, and he was running for what we call our local member of parliament is called the MP, your member of parliament. So in the Richmond area, in the riding is what they call basically the jurisdiction. This guy, he came out and he is a very far right extremist. I mean, he is so far right. And he basically, I'm not kidding you guys. He came knocking on our doors. And again, we're in a place called Steveston, which is a little suburb of Richmond. And he said, these are some of the campaign things that I want to do. Number one, I'm against, gay marriage. So, and I think that what we should do is we should actually send gay people to a re-education center, so that they could be basically unbrainwashed. And I'm like, wow, that is unbelievable that you could, like, in Canada, you would come out and say that. Like, that's just mind blowing to me. I said, personally, I don't have a problem, with gay marriage. I mean, that if you're, that there's nothing wrong with that. That everybody has their choice. Like, again, we're in Canada where we have that freedom to choose. So you want to, if you want to marry a woman or a man, that's your choice. There's nothing wrong with that. I certainly don't agree with sending people to a re-education center, for that. And then he also said, he's like, we need to combat the rise of China and we need to promote more democracy in China. And I'm thinking, okay, first of all, you are my local member of parliament. So what you need to be talking about is, what about our school system, our parks, the traffic situation? These are the things that I want you working on. Like, you have the power to change local things in our neighborhood that are affecting our families and our communities. What the heck are you talking about with gay marriage and basically China? This has nothing to do with us. And again, this is where but again, he can crowd raise and he can fundraise money because all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to take a stance against China, and people are like, they just buy into that. Yeah, let's talk against China. And anyways, so this guy, he actually lost the election in this last election because of his views were so extreme, which I was really happy to see because that view is just so toxic. We don't need any of that. I got a super chat coming in from Jolene Tay with a little thumbs up. Thank you for the support to the channel, guys. I really appreciate the super chats and supporting the channel. I know on this channel I've been a little bit quiet the last 2 weeks. I've got some exciting things in the pipeline. I've got 2 important videos that are going to be coming out this coming week. So make sure that you stay tuned because I have a big announcement to make, and I'm really excited to share that with you. But anyways, I want to thank you guys for your amazing support. I've also got another super chat from John Lee sending in some chat saying, thank you for being you. I appreciate it. This is a really, really fiery question right here. We're getting off topic here, but this is a very big issue that we're seeing in the United States and Canada for that matter. Cyrus, do you agree that a minor of age 12 to 15 years old has the right to change sex without parents' approval? 110% no. That is absolutely the most ridiculous thing that I have heard about. And there is no way that a child from the ages of 12 to 15 should be able to change their sex without their parents' approval. And this is something, we're getting a little bit off topic here, but since you guys brought it up in the comment section and I want this to be interactive, I'm happy to discuss this too. This is the problem with the United States right now, is that we are a nation that is basically going on a civil war over whether a man can be pregnant or not. We have a huge movement going on right now with the trans movement, with the basically this whole movement that is quite disturbing, to be honest, because it's so ridiculous where, for example, someone is saying, we should have passed laws that allow a 12-year-old to change their sex without their parents' approval. No, that is absolutely irresponsible. And it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking, in my opinion. What do you know at age 12? At age 12, you're a child. You're not able to make decisions. And again, this is a life-altering decision that would have consequences for the rest of your life. I think it's completely irresponsible. That's for a different topic, but I'm very much against that. We got Fermubi in the chat. Fermubi, how are you, buddy? Hope you're doing well. I just lost your comment. Where was it? And we got a lot of chats coming in. Here's a perspective. I tell you, don't come to my house, yet you come. So what level of disrespect is to that? Yeah, Fernando's got a good perspective on this. I think, again, it has to be smart diplomacy. I mean, we just need cooler heads to survive. And I just go back to that again. I've talked to some really well-connected, very influential people in Washington, D.C. that have, this is the thing that's really difficult too in America. The views that are very extreme. You get a guy like Tom Cotton on national television. Let me bring you guys back to February 2022 when the Beijing Olympics were happening. Tom Cotton, this little senator from Arkansas, was getting on television saying, we should not send our American athletes to Beijing. You want to know why? Because the Communist Party in China is going to steal their DNA and they're going to genetically alter super soldiers using American athletes' DNA to help take over the world. And I'm just like scratching my head thinking, is this guy for real? Like have you been watching too many sci-fi movies? Like, I mean, you sound so uneducated when you go up on TV and you say this, but the problem is there's a lot of uneducated people in America, and so people buy into that fear. You see, I can sell, and this is something that's really difficult as someone that is a bridge builder, someone that is talking geopolitics, that I try to look for the positive in every situation. I mean, it's still in my opinion that when the United States and China work together, the world's going to win. And despite the fact that, that the tensions continue to rise, I do believe that the United States and China have to find a way to work together. And I will continue working on that mission. But it's easy. It'd be very easy for me to come out with a video saying exactly these extreme lines, and American people would buy into that. I could take that video and I could sell that very easily to the American public, because fear is a very important emotion. And that's what Tom Cotton does. Tom Cotton, he's written a book. He's trying to, sell more copies of his book. He's trying to get more public speaking appearances. He's trying to make more money. So he knows if I push that very extreme, very anti-China narrative, I can make people become scared. And when people become scared, they're going to listen to me. And it's just irresponsible. Of course, we saw Team USA. They went to Beijing. I've even interviewed, if you go back to my February channels, I interviewed a Team USA bobsled athlete, who went to Beijing. And all of the athletes, I interviewed Canadian athletes, American athletes, Chinese athletes. That event was so wonderful. I mean, it was a fantastic Olympics. And most of the foreigners that went there, I interviewed a Jamaican skier as well. They all said the venues were fantastic. The people were fantastic. The organization was fantastic. Everything about this Olympics was fantastic. We absolutely loved our time in China. But you're not going to be able to hear that. You won't hear that in US media, because anything that comes out positively, we're not going to show that, because we want to make sure that we show China in a negative light. And that's what this channel is about, is we're trying to provide some of that nuance. And, we really need to make sure that, people better understand the situation here. So I think we've got some more super chats coming in here. Guys, appreciate your support. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up. We got so many different things. Here we go. From Jenna Cyrus, really glad to see your live stream. Hey, I'm really excited too. 2,500 people on the live stream. That's fantastic. Great turnout this morning. Really happy to have all of the support from you guys. You guys are just amazing. And we got another super chat here from D2 2008, sending in a little emoji. You are amazing. Thank you so much for the support, guys. I really appreciate it. This is such an important topic, and this is something that I'm going to be doing. I've done back-to-back live streams. Seems like this time frame works out really well for everybody. It's a little bit early for me. It's 6:50 in the morning here on the West Coast where I'm at. But it's exciting because I like this time frame because I can kind of hit all the time zones around the world. Of course, it's 9 a.m. in New York, about 2 p.m. in Europe. Asia, it's in the evening time, and Australia in the late evening, but we can kind of hit all the time zones, which kind of works out nice. And you really like my paintings behind me. Thank you so much. I kind of the best makeshift background that I can do for it right now. And yeah, I mean, again, it's just Red Scare and Yellow Peril is what's fueling the xenophobic sentiment in the West. Absolutely, we're seeing a huge rise in that, and it's really sad. Let me go through some of the comments here. Yeah, so here we go from David Chung is the U.S. LGBT laws is easy to pass, but in universal health, homelessness, infrastructure are not the low-hanging fruit. That's an issue with the United States right now is, the thing about it is kind of one of the things that I've realized about the United States is the United States is the most capitalist country in the world. And I'm probably going to make a video about this in the coming future is, why do we see this wealth gap, just so much in America? Because in America, you have a lot of wealth. There's a lot of wealth in this country, but you have a lot of poverty as well. And the interesting thing is that you look at America, we're all about capitalism. We will look for the business opportunity in everything. Kind of the most simplest, example I can give of that is the fact that the United States, we do not offer universal health care. Not universal, well, we don't offer universal health care, but we don't offer a federal maternity leave inside the United States. Now, there's only two countries in the world that do not offer this, and that is Papua New Guinea and the United States of America. And quite simply, it's very simple. If we offer maternity leave, well, that means that mothers can't work. And if they can't work, we can't make money. So from that United States perspective, we value capitalism and we value the almighty dollar. We want to make as much money as possible, and we have a lot of greed in that. And so that's where, for example, when you look at these Republican, congressmen who are saying a war with Taiwan would actually be good for our military-industrial complex. Yeah, it would be good, but it would also be devastating for the world economy. But you can kind of see where the people are blinded sometimes, and it's sad to say. I mean, if you're thinking about selling more weapons to Taiwan and making a profit over peace and stability in the world, you have a problem, in my opinion. There's something wrong in your head, and that's just irresponsible actions. But again, in Canada, for example, you see in Canada, you actually have 12 months of maternity leave that is guaranteed for all mothers in Canada. And that's a huge difference. And the thing is because, and I believe that's a very big thing that you need to do for your society, because how do you raise the next generation? A mother should be with their child, especially that first year. It is absolutely vital. And it's so common in America that mothers are going back to work after 6 weeks. 6 weeks after pregnancy, they go back to work and they send the baby, just 6 weeks old, to full-time daycare from 8 to 5, so that mother can go back to work and go make that money for those U.S. corporations. And that's sad. That's really sad. I mean, I think that there's things that we need to improve on. And that's something, again, we go back to the very beginning of this stream. Might as well just go ahead and bring this slide up, because I know we have a lot of new people joining in here. And, again, this is, what we're talking about with Nancy Pelosi. I'm focusing on strengthening America's middle class and creating jobs. Well, honestly, if you're going to Taiwan, you're not accomplishing that goal. Going to Taiwan serves nothing but your own purpose. It doesn't serve anything for American citizens. Quite frankly, American citizens don't give a crap about you going to Taiwan. They really don't. And I'm just going to speak very real here, because it doesn't benefit them. Many American citizens that I've talked to in the last couple of weeks here, they've said, you know what? Like, why are we even getting involved in Ukraine? Like, we're spending billions of dollars to Ukraine. Meanwhile, we have all of these crises going on inside the United States. Like, I'm sorry, but as an American citizen, I want to focus on what's going to impact my life. So again, we need better diplomacy. We need better, um, we need better leadership from the United States government here. All right, let's kind of can you collaborate with Eileen Gu? Wow, now that would be a fantastic collaboration. I think Eileen Gu would be almost impossible to get. She's so high profile right now. I did actually reach out to Eileen Gu's management team. This was probably in like November of last year because I knew that was going to be a big story. I knew that she was, probably most likely going to win some gold medals and really, become a huge athlete and a huge star. So I didn't even get a response from them. So unfortunately, I don't think that that's going to be um, possible. So, but thanks for the encouragement. I'd love to do that. Maybe one day. David Parker, $5. Chad, thank you so much for the support there, David. I just got here. Has Nancy Pelosi arrived in China? So, David, Nancy Pelosi's plane has left American soil. She is in the air right now. She's on a very large aircraft that can take her as far as Japan. So we don't know exactly where her schedule. We don't know her schedule, and that's kind of the thing that I mentioned at the beginning of the stream. Even leading up to this, United States media was asking the White House press. They were asking Nancy Pelosi's office, "Give us the details of your trip. Just tell us anywhere that you're going." Everything was very hush hush. And I was even listening to some podcasts, that discussed the U.S. and China relationship, and they had said it seems like a very odd time. The timing of this is not very good. And there's another thing that we need to understand is that this is a very sensitive time because this week, the Taiwanese military has been actually doing their annual military drills that, they basically do these drills every year, once a year, every year. They do these drills, basically to reenact, what happens if there was an invasion from China. This is how our military is going to respond. So you have Taiwan going through these military drills. In addition to that, August 1st, which is next Monday, is the 95th anniversary of the People's Liberation Army. Now, we should expect to see a very big parade in Beijing. You're definitely going to see a very big promotion event from the Chinese government, very similar to any other big country that has a military. In the United States, for example, we have all these military parades celebrating our military. I don't think there's anything wrong with China celebrating the military. Again, it's what big countries do. 95th year anniversary, that's a big event. So, you kind of have Taiwan, and their military doing stuff. We have China and their military doing stuff. We have, again, I mentioned this in last week's stream as well, is that we have both the United States and China coming up to very important political events coming up in this November. The People's Congress, the 20th People's Congress is happening this November, where Xi Jinping will get his third term. Again, we have the US midterm elections. And again, this is really the big thing, that we see with, the United States and China is that it's just, there's so many different events going on right now. I think, but let's get down to the solution, because we've talked about, why Nancy Pelosi shouldn't go. We talked about the importance of maintaining good diplomacy. Let me just go ahead and share with you guys a really good tweet here. I think this is a really good tweet that I saw. Both Washington and Beijing feel cornered now, and a crisis is looming. Believe it or not, only Taipei can avert the crisis. Taipei can simply tell Pelosi, "We appreciate your support for Taiwan's democracy, but please come at a later time." And that's just as simple as it is. I think the ball is in Taipei's court. It would be really great. It would be great leadership from Taiwan if they just simply said, "Look, now's not the time. You don't need to come visit right now. There's a lot of tensions in the air. Both the United States and China, hey, you guys are both dealing with your big political events that need to happen this November. We're going to see Xi Jinping get a third term this November. That's going to happen. But let's go ahead and make that official. That's going to be official this November. And then we're going to see the midterm elections happen." Now, this is kind of probably, and again, this is what's really sad, is that Nancy Pelosi, she potentially could be going to Taiwan just to try to make the Democratic Party look stronger against China and hopefully secure some votes in this midterm election. It does look likely that the Democrats are going to be losing a lot of power. I think that we're going to see a big shift again in the United States. And I do think that we're going to see a Republican president come to power in 2024. I did make my prediction in a tweet. If you look back at my tweets a few weeks ago, I do think that Ron DeSantis, who is from my home state of Florida, I do believe that he's going to make a very big run as a Republican, and I do think he has a chance at potentially becoming the next United States president. We'll see what happens there. That's still obviously a couple years away, but it's going to be interesting to see here. And I also want to share another important perspective here as we come, excuse me, as we come to the end of the stream. Let me just go through. Sorry, my throat is a little dry here. I'm just really struggling. Been talking a little bit too much. Awesome. That's what you get when you keep voting for the same people in office. Don't cry now. Yeah, it's there's a lot of thing. Let's see. Yeah, guys, I'm just reading the comments here. Nancy, you risk and lose your life. You're playing with Chinese fire. I'd be interested to see really what China's reaction to this would be. I think I don't know. I mean, it's a really sad situation where you see, for example, the Democrats, trying to win favor in this, and this is the thing that again, like I want to finish up the stream is saying, at the end of the day, most Americans are not really, they don't want to see Nancy Pelosi go to Taiwan. They really don't give a crap about this. This is just not important to them. But it really does seem as it's really amazing when you have someone like the Speaker of the House, who is second in line to the US presidency, when she holds so much power. Again, where she travels in the world, she represents a lot of what the US, diplomacy is. So I think that's really, that's really a big issue. Let's see. I wonder how many people secretly hope she doesn't return. Well, I think there's a lot of people that Nancy Pelosi is a very divisive figure in the United States. I think it's very much split down the middle, but that's pretty much every politician, to be honest. And that's kind of where we are in the United States with the politics, is that it's very much split down the middle. You're either left, you're either right. There's very few people that are in between, and and I would say that, well, I'm going to take that back. Let me take back that statement. There's a lot of people on the far left. There's a lot of people on the right. I think there is actually a lot of people in the middle, because we're frustrated. And that's where I stand. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I actually don't like either side. I'm kind of in the middle, really scratching my head thinking, this is a really tough system that we have in America, because as an American citizen, I have the right to vote, but I'm always given two options. I'm only given two options. And both of these options, neither of them are good. Right now. I mean, we look at the last U.S. presidency election, Biden and Trump. I didn't like either of those candidates, and I have no choice on selecting those candidates. I'm just simply given the two candidates at the end of the day, and I think that's where a lot of frustration is in the United States. Is that this is why, again, you see a very historically low voter turnout of around 50%. Half of America doesn't even take the time to vote, because we just don't simply care, because it's kind of like, well, it is what it is. If Biden wins, Biden's going to win and he's going to do his deal. And then 4 years later, we're going to get another change. So it's really, again, like I'm not anti-democracy, but I am very much anti the belief that democracy is the only way. And that I'm very much against the fact that we believe that we have the best government in the world. I think there's a lot of other governments around the world that do just as good, if not better, than America. So guys, we've just passed an hour of the stream. Let's wrap this up. Let me know any final questions that you have here. All right. Really appreciate you guys being here. Over 2,500 people here on the stream for this last one. And basically, I think that's what's going to happen. So I wanted to share that open letter that I shared earlier in the stream from George Koo. I think that's a really good one, simply saying, look, Nancy, you want to go to Taiwan, but this is the consequences that are going to happen. Again, let's just have some cooler heads, come up here, and let's have some better diplomacy. Is the main thing that I want to, get through in today's stream. Where is part of the democracy when you only get two bad choices? Cyrus, is Japan as hawkish on China as the United States? Well, Japan definitely, they have a very strategic relationship with China as well. I think Japan typically does follow the U.S. They are a very big, they are a very big, ally of the United States. So I think what you do see is Japan will typically follow the United States. I do not think that they are anti-China or anything, but they typically do follow that. Rocking it live, Cyrus, thank you so much. This is from Lennox. Do Americans love Russia as of now? Americans, the sentiment here in America right now is definitely very much anti-Russia. But again, the perspective, the interesting thing that we have to realize here is that in the United States, the media is also controlled, and you're only hearing one side of the story. Right now, the only message that you're hearing in America is that Vladimir Putin is a horrible person, that this is a massive war going on in Ukraine, and that we must 100% support the Ukrainian side. Now, I definitely don't condone what Vladimir Putin has done. I definitely recognize that this is an invasion of a sovereign country. But there's a lot of people that have come out, and I've made videos on this as well. I mean, there's a lot of John Mearsheimer. He's an outstanding United States professor, and he is very big advocate that the United States the United States and the ever expanding expansion of NATO eastward has been the main trigger in this war. That is what John Mearsheimer has said. That's been the opinion of many people. And again, I've interviewed Patrick Lancaster. You can look for that channel. That's one of my most popular videos on this channel. An American on the ground in Ukraine, sharing over the last 8 years, sharing his experiences on the ground. That interview, you would never see that interview in American politics, because that doesn't preach the angle that the United States government wants its citizens to understand. And so that's something that we always, this is what is so important when we're talking about geopolitics, is that, for example, when we say that China's government controls the media, yes, that's a true statement. China's government most definitely has control over what media is being presented in China, but so does the United States, and so does everywhere else in the world. And we see that, we see constantly the freedom of speech is being violated in the United States. We see that happening so often. Right now, basically in the United States, if you say anything that is against a vaccine or anything that is against getting boosted, with the COVID-19 booster, you could potentially be canceled from social media. There was a very famous case. There was a doctor that is a medical doctor that, just a few weeks ago, he said, pregnant women should really be cautious of the vaccine. In my professional opinion, again, he's a medical doctor. In my professional opinion, if you're pregnant, you should not be getting this vaccine. And his account was permanently suspended on Twitter, because again, that's not what the United States government wants you to hear. The United States government wants you to move forward with your booster shots and make sure that you get an additional booster. Now, this is something that's really happening in Canada that is very, very a big story that's happening in Canada. And this is actually something that might be worth me making a video about. A few weeks ago, Beijing came out, and Xi Jinping said that they're going to institute a mandatory vaccine, for residents of Beijing. Now, the interesting thing is that within China, there's a very low vaccination rate. And mainly because a lot of Chinese people are not trusting the vaccine. They don't trust that vaccine. And this is the interesting thing. When Xi Jinping and the Chinese government came out and said, we're going to institute this mandatory vaccine, the Beijing residents, they basically had a huge outcry on social media. And Xi Jinping listened to the people. And the Chinese government, they retracted that new provision. And they said, we're going to allow the people to choose. That's very interesting, because we're seeing the exact opposite happening in Canada. The Justin Trudeau government, who is under fire right now, under 30% approval rating. Justin Trudeau is not a very popular man in Canada. He's really taking this to the extreme, but he basically said, if you're not boosted within the last 9 months, you are now no longer fully vaccinated, and you could potentially be seeing more restrictions and more lockdowns in Canada. And you could be seeing more mandates where the Canadian government says, if you're not boosted every 9 months, with this booster shot, you're not allowed to travel anymore. You're not allowed to board a plane, an automobile. You're not allowed to go on the subway system here. So that's caused a lot of outrage for many Canadians, because many Canadians like myself. I mean, I've had 2 vaccines, but I've chosen not to get the booster. I don't think at this point. And this is maybe a total different stream here, but I don't feel that it's necessary to get the booster, considering the fact that, COVID has evolved so much and that it's much less severe right now. So that's kind of a different fight. I've got a super chat coming in from Zephyrus Flight. Internal Taiwan politics aside, I've always wondered what it'd be like if both the ROC and the PRC unified their governance of one China. Keep up the great work, Cyrus. Taiwan's a very interesting thing because I think what many people, what they really see from Taiwan is the fact that many people just actually like it the way it is. And I actually think that the current system right now, it's not ideal, but it's perfect. I mean, it actually works out really good because everybody's kind of happy. Taiwan, if you ask a lot of Taiwanese people, they're going to say, "Hey, we feel like we're an independent country. We feel like we have our own democracy, we have our own elections. We're kind of doing our thing." And they can have trade and relations with many countries around the world. They have their own flag that they can fly at the Olympics. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, but it works because China's happy. They're happy, and the United States can still have their relationship with Taiwan and China. It basically works. And I think this is where I pulled up at some data. You can look back at my earlier videos that I made on Taiwan. There's a survey from one of the I think it's the National University of Taiwan, where the overwhelming majority of Taiwanese citizens actually just want to keep the status quo. Now, some people say, "Hey, I would like to one day be an independent country, maybe one day in the future, but not right now." Not right now. But so basically, what their vote was is status quo for now. Let's think about it later. So you have most people in Taiwan who are saying status quo, and exactly what George Koo wrote in that letter. The reality is that we like our relationship with China. There's a lot of Taiwanese people in China. There's a tremendous amount of trade between Taiwan and China. So, I mean, again, what drives economic success? What really is the thing that's going to help people get into the middle class and make, improve prosperity is doing business deals. I do, and I've mentioned this. I personally don't believe that China is going to attack Taiwan because it would be devastating for China's local economy. I mean, it really would. It would be devastating for China's economy, and they need to have that strong driver of the Chinese economy. Chinese economy is not strong right now. I mean, there's a lot of things that China's battling. I mean, they're battling, an extreme amount of debt within the property sector. These development groups. We've got the bank crisis that I covered a little bit more last week. There's a lot of things that China's dealing with in itself. Now, I do believe that China's going to figure things out, and again, it's nothing wrong with having problems to deal with. Every country in the world has problems to deal with. So China's going through that right now. They're still battling with COVID. We still see the COVID restrictions. So there is, things that every country is going to have to deal with. But it is really interesting to see an example where Beijing listens to the people and revokes that policy that you have to get mandatory vaccinated and says, we're going to let the people choose. We're going to give them that freedom. But in a place like Canada, you don't have that freedom, and it's becoming more and more, we're losing that. The CPC and the Taiwanese government both say they rule the whole of China. Most in the West do not know this. That's absolutely spot on, Trevor. I'm glad that you brought that up. And it's so true because the reality is it's never the question, is Taiwan part of China? That is never the right question. Taiwan is distinctly part of China. And again, I always say this, Chiang Kai-shek, the founder, the big leader, that was defeated by Chairman Mao, that retreated to the island of Taiwan. He was one of the biggest proponents of a one China. The issue here is which government is the legitimate government of China. In the Taiwanese perspective, for a lot of Taiwanese, they do think that their government rules not only Taiwan, but mainland China. So it's not an issue of, is this a separate country? No, it's who is the legitimate government. But since 1972, 72 or 73, the United Nations and the United States have both recognized that it is the government in Beijing that does oversee all of China, including Taiwan. All right, guys. Let's finish up this stream. You guys are amazing. So many of you have been sticking with me for this entire stream. I want to thank you all for spending time with me on this Saturday, and I really, really appreciate it. And thank you guys for all the super chats and all the support to the channel. You guys are amazing. Did Taiwan invite Pelosi? Not to my knowledge. I don't believe that they have invited him. They wouldn't do that because that would be a red line for them to cross. And I think that's where a lot of Taiwanese are saying, it's like, hey, we never invited you to come. Again, it's just, I'm going to just end the stream with this. If you go back and you look at my very first video that I made on this channel about China, It was LeBron James. It was LeBron James and his comments about China. Now, this was in 2019. The issue was is that the Houston Rockets general manager sent out a tweet, and the tweet was basically saying, stand for Hong Kong, stand for support. I support Hong Kong. I support independence of Hong Kong. Now, the interesting thing is that Daryl Morey, the general manager of the Houston Rockets, he is dealing with 12, I think it was no less than 12 Chinese sponsors of the Houston Rockets. Now, everybody knows the Houston Rockets. They're probably the most famous team in China because of Yao Ming. So many Chinese fans do like the Houston Rockets. As a result, the Houston Rockets have sponsorship from 12 mainland Chinese companies. Now, as soon as the thing about this is this is where we get into a huge issue. Americans always want everybody to know I'm American and I have the freedom to say whatever I want to say. And this is what LeBron James said that I thought was really brilliant. LeBron James says, of course we have the freedom to say what we want. We are Americans. We have the freedom of speech, but you cannot think that there is no consequences to your freedom of speech. Yes, you can say what you want to say, but there are consequences depending on where you are and where you say that. LeBron, when Daryl Morey sent that tweet out, LeBron James and some of the other NBA players, they're in Shanghai playing in an exhibition game. And now all of a sudden you have, it becomes a very political situation. And LeBron James said, hey, man, this isn't smart. We're here in China. We're doing an exhibition game. The NBA is growing their efforts around the world. Our goal is to grow the game of basketball. China is a huge market. Obviously, bringing NBA stars to China is a big part of that. And what does LeBron James care about? LeBron James cares about playing basketball. He wants to interact with fans. He wants to grow the game. He wants to, be the best basketball player that he can be. And that's exactly what he was doing. And then all of a sudden, you got Daryl Morey who's saying something stupid, just for, again, I have no problem if you want to, if you're Daryl Morey and you want to support Hong Kong, that's your choice. As an American citizen, you 100% have the freedom to do that. But what I said is you should go ahead and resign from the Houston Rockets because you can't be financially benefiting from 12 Chinese companies and then turning around and slapping them in the face and saying, guess what? I want Hong Kong to be an independent country, because Hong Kong's not. It's just a stupid argument, and it doesn't make any sense. It's just quite simple. Hong Kong is a city that has always been part of China. It's always been part of China. Even when it was under British rule, it was a lease. A lease by the definition does not mean ownership. It means that you are basically taking care of that. You're leasing that out for a period of 99 years, and then you're going to return it to the rightful owner. And again, I mean, we don't need to go into this, but again, how did Hong Kong, how did Britain even get control of Hong Kong? Of course, it was the Opium Wars. So again, there's so many things that we need to really understand. And this is why studying the history, understanding the nuances, understanding these things is so important. Yes, I am an American citizen. I have the freedom to say whatever I want to say. Well, again, and I've even proven that in today's stream, even that's limited because, we see this cancel culture that is so alive in America right now. Again, if you say something that is against the trans community, if you come out and you say something, you have the risk of being canceled. If you say something against the gay community, you could be canceled. If you say something against Ukraine right now, you're going to be canceled. It's become so, this cancel culture has become so prevalent in America. It's very dangerous. And quite frankly, it's very dangerous because, what it does is it leads us down a road where people, it's really sad. I saw an article, and if you go back and you check a few videos ago, I made a video talking about how China is wanting to, or sorry, how the United States is wanting to use cancel culture against China, and that simply is, I believe the Houston Rockets owner, he owns 6 steakhouses, the famous Morton Steakhouse. He owns 6 Morton Steakhouses in China. And basically the media was saying, well, we should cancel this guy. This guy is doing business in China. So all being an American citizen and owning a restaurant in China, that's now something bad. Well, we can't feed Chinese people steak. It's the same thing when Elon Musk opened a Tesla showroom, or he opened a Tesla store in Xinjiang, and people were all losing their stuff. What about human rights? And it's like, well, we're manufacturing in China and we want to sell our cars to everywhere. Is it wrong for people that live in the Xinjiang province? Can they not get access to Tesla? So again, it's again this cancer culture that's really becoming very prevalent in the United States. Guys, we've gone a little bit over. We're now an hour and 20 minutes. I want to thank all of you for spending your time with me today. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. We've had an amazing chat. For most of this stream, we've had well over 2,000 people in here joining me. So I just appreciate all of your all of your amazing support. Let's see, Cyrus, U.S. won't tolerate the rise of rival superpowers. Yeah, that's basically what we're seeing. China is coming to the table, and it's the only country in the world that can really challenge the United States. And I mean, and the thing is that I would say this. Both the United States and China, they both they're both thinking that their way is the best way. Both are a little bit stubborn, to be honest. Both are a little bit, my way is this. But I would say, from China's perspective, the one thing that I do like about China, and how they deal around the world is, China doesn't let political differences get in the way. China, as they go around and they make these business deals, they really just focus on the most important thing. And that really is the fact that if we can do business and we can economically cooperate, that is how both our Chinese citizens and your local citizens will benefit and cooperate. And I think the United States, we typically don't do that. And I've highlighted this over many, many videos here where we see, again, the United States, we have a horrific track record in Latin America. I mean, we have a terrible track record where we basically install coup governments, we build military bases. We don't really do anything for the local community. We just try to basically have our interests at heart. So that's where we see a lot of things are shifting. And why are people going for Chinese loans? Well, because China, we know that China's not going to build a military base on your land. China's not going to try to militarily take over your government. China's not going to install a coup government and overthrow you. China's not going to say, hey, you should do it our way. No, China basically just sticks to themselves. That's basically the only thing that China wants. Let us be us, and let us get on with our way. And the interesting thing about this is that, in America, we're so scared of the word communism. I mean, if you say communism, people are genuinely scared of that word. And it's basically an ideology. And the funny thing is that in the United States, we'll often hear, well, communism is destined to fail. And I'm kind of thinking, well, if it's destined to fail, then why don't we just go ahead and let China fail? I mean, you got guys like Gordon Chang who have been preaching for 25 years, China is going to collapse. It's going to happen in 1998. It's going to happen in 2001, 2005, 2010, 2012. Every couple of years, he gives an update. I mean, the guy's been wrong for 25 years, but yet, that's what people in America want to hear. So again, I just can't stress enough the importance of going out there and understanding and really understanding, these cultural nuances and making sure that we get time on the ground in China. That's been difficult because of COVID. Many Americans can't travel to China. Expats are leaving. It's difficult because our world and our insights into China are very limited right now. But again, when I speak to Americans on the ground and here in America, and I say, hey guys, let me share with you my experiences in China. And I do the reason that I have hope in a future of a good U.S.-China relationship is that I want everybody that's outside of America. If you're outside of America and you're watching this stream and you're thinking, what do average Americans think of China? The average American is actually a lot more open-minded than you think, because a lot of Americans, they have very little trust in the United States government. They have very little trust in the United States media. So when I come in, I say, hey, I lived in China for 10 years. I speak Chinese. I do a lot of business with China, and I help American companies go to China, help Chinese companies come to America. This is my world. This is what I do on a daily basis. They're like, oh, okay. Well, tell me, what was Shanghai really like? I've kind of heard it's actually a pretty amazing city. And that's kind of the attitude that you hear from a lot of Americans. And I've always been able to, people ask me, Cyrus, what do you do? Well, I say, I help people understand China. I help people, and I kind of say it that way because it's an inviting question. Oh, really? What do you mean? Well, let me tell you what I do, and I tell them exactly what we do here on YouTube and, my consulting work that I do, things like that. So this, and again, so I have hope for a better future for these two countries, because I've spent a lot of time in North America over these last few years, and whether it's the United States or Canada, there's a lot more people that are open-minded than what the United States media wants you to believe in. So guys, we're going to end it there. Thank you so much. And I really, really, really appreciate all of your support. And thank you so much. So guys, we're going to end it with a little aerial view. I know you guys like this, so I'll stay in the comment section as we finish this out. And I want to just thank you all for your amazing support and look forward to 2 awesome new videos that are coming out on the channel this week with some very big, important, and exciting news. Can't wait to share it with you guys. Thank you all. We'll see you soon.